You've been hurt and you're all cried out, you say. You walk down the street, pushing people out of your way. You packed your bags and all alone you want to ride. You don't want nothing, don't need no one by your side. You're walking tough, baby, but you're walking blind to the ties that bind.
Hello, younglings, and welcome to Padawan Library, the only Star Wars Junior novel podcast. I'm Levi Apprentice, and my co-host, a man who pumps it up, don't bring it down, Tim May. Tim, how are you today?
Fine. Is this like some sort of veiled reference to my recent colonoscopy? Or
Oh, no.
pumping it up? I don't know.
Here, I'll give you another clue to that reference. Break the rules, don't break the law.
Huh.
I'm referencing that Arnold Schwarzenegger song.
Oh, okay. I don't know why. All right, if you guys don't know that, that's worth checking out on YouTube.
Pump it up, don't bring it down.
So this is a song where that's by some Austrian rapper that has a guest verse from Arnold Schwarzenegger. That came out like this year. It's like a new song.
Yeah, it's funny because you showed me this video. You were so excited to show me this video, and this rap is an inspirational rap, and Arnold at times rhymes with the previous word that he rhymes with, like much like me in the Cheer sketch. But our friend Zach, he sent this video to me a couple days ago and was like, have you seen this? And I was like, Tim showed me this, and he said that he texted our friend of the show, Brooke, who then showed the video to you, who then showed the video to me. So I thought that was very silly. And the rapper is Andreas Gabrielier?
Yeah. Well, whatever. Like I will say, this doesn't matter to our listeners at all, but Brooke did not show it to me. I showed it to Brooke. That's a fact.
Oh, okay. All right. I gotcha.
I will claim credit for discovering, quote-unquote, this. I'm shocked this hasn't gone more viral, to be honest. It's wild.
Well, let's see. It has 2 million views.
No, that's more than I thought. Never mind. It's kind of gone viral. But, yeah.
It's growing. It's getting there. Because I told Dan and Joel about this, other friends of the show.
Yeah, many friends of the show. Hopefully all future guests eventually of the show.
Pump it up, don't bring it down.
You guys gotta check this out. So, anyway, speaking of the internet, something that we've only experienced through people on the internet, the planet Batuu. You have some Batuu news.
I do. Bright suns and rising moons. I'm Levi Apprentice, and this is Batuu News.
Oh, no.
Love has blossomed under the black spires. We have at least one confirmed report that on June 23rd, near Onaka Transport Solutions, a marriage proposal happened. We are happy to report that R. Garcia 13 said yes to Brandon while he was down on one knee. A hearty congratulations to them from all of us here at Batuu News. We wish you the best on your journey through the galaxy. That's all for tonight, folks. Join us tomorrow when we check out what's popping at Keisaka's Kettle. Until then, may the spires be with you. I'm Levi Peretic. Back to you, Tim.
This is not what I want. Oh, Lord.
So people are asking their loved ones to marry them, and it was under the Falcon.
That's cool. Good for them. Congratulations.
Right.
You know, I don't know why we're talking about this, but
Well, this is a great segue into something that you and I got to experience.
Yes. Actually, before we start this, we spent last weekend together. We'll get into the meat of this in a minute, but I just realized I'm looking right now. I spent the entire last weekend with you, and I forgot to give you back your copy of The Deadly Hunter, which is still at my house.
God! I was gonna bring this up at the end of the episode and give you crap about this because you and I also, while we spent the weekend together, went to a half-priced books.
Yes,
and we found some books. And I haven't announced this yet. I was able to complete my Jedi Quest run.
I have most of Jedi Quest. I'm only missing 2 right now, so...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my shelf, I can't take a good photo of my shelf right now because the Deadly Hunter is missing. But the also problem is I still do not have Jedi Apprentice 18. I looked this up on eBay today, and it's probably going to cost me like $8, which absolutely crushes me.
Thank God I already had that one.
I'm so
By the way,
jealous
the secret MVP of this podcast, I should shout this person out. Michelle, my very good friend Michelle, a year ago, 2 years ago, before we even thought about doing this podcast, she had the bulk of the Jedi Apprentice books, and she lent them to me with the understanding that I would fill in the rest, and then we would essentially share ownership of the series. And now it's finally happened, so when we're done with Jedi Apprentice, they will be returning to Michelle's house. She will be the keeper of the Padawan library, the Padawan library. She'll be the keeper. We're assistant librarians. She's actually Jocasta Nu, so shouts to Michelle.
Right.
Anyway... well, the reason we were together last weekend is we went to the amusement park, Cedar Point, you and a couple other people, and this Cedar Point is like mostly a roller coaster place, but...
Yeah, they claim to be the roller coaster capital of the world in Sandusky, Ohio. It's only open like 5 months a year.
Oh yeah, how dare they when,
Yeah, I know.
It's a four-season place. We're not in California.
Well, if you ever actually look at Ohio, it's very interesting with the amount of amusement parks that are there, because not too far from there is Kings Island, which used to be a Paramount Park. They're now owned by Cedar Fields. And not too far from there was
Geauga
Lake, which... Yeah, well, yeah. There was Geauga Lake and SeaWorld. I don't know if SeaWorld actually owned Geauga Lake, but then for a very brief time, Geauga Lake became a Six Flags park, and then for about a year, it became a Cedar Fields park, and then they closed it down and took all the roller coasters out of there.
Whatever.
But that part of Ohio is like a very interesting place for amusement parks.
Yeah, I mean, there's amusement parks everywhere. Most amusement parks are just seasonal places. The places like Disney and Universal are the exception.
Yes. So Cedar Point here, they have we went there last year, you and I, and we enjoyed some of the live performances. We got to enjoy the live performances here today, but they took their live performance game up to a new level because they opened an immersive island. On paper, it sounds a whole lot like Galaxy's Edge, but they opened Forbidden Frontier on Adventure Island, and I'm going to read the description of Forbidden Frontier on Adventure Island that's on the Cedar Point website. I got to read this before we went. There is a completely new land to discover at Cedar Point, and the story starts with you. Although a celebration of peace is taking place, is everything what it seems? As the day unfolds, you'll have the opportunity to play a role as big or as little as you want in this immersive living story, with the power to sway the outcome and the fate of Adventure Island, depending on the choices that you make. From mind-bending challenges to group competitions to secret missions or simple conversation starting, you'll have to figure out who to side with or who to trust or who to simply sit back and grab some provisions with and watch the action unfold. It's time to discover and uncover a new adventure like no other.
Oh, bars. Anyway... so this place we went and we were excited, but I have to say, I think this helped prepare us for Galaxy's Edge. We spent,
I think it did too.
We spent about an hour immersed in this world, really engaging with the actors and the characters. I was tasked with bringing a basket of vegetables to another character, and I gave it to the wrong person, and I think I just ruined the day. And there's a picture of me getting that, so maybe we'll post that on Instagram.
Yeah, a German scientist, maybe archaeologist, we're not sure which, handed Tim this basket, and he was tasked to give it to the farmer. I assumed he knew that the farmer was the portly man in overalls and a straw hat, but Tim thought the farmer was who I think is the minstrel, man who had a small guitar with him.
This is what happened. They were together, and then the farmer was giving a presentation to a whole crowd, and then he leads the crowd away, and the only actor left was the minstrel, and I didn't want to follow the farmer all day. This is the problem with immersive parks, guys. This is the problem. Anyway.
You're totally right. It was awkward because, he was like, the farmer was talking, because they had farm animals there. And he was talking about the farm animals, and he was going to the emus, and the emu stand was, I don't know if you noticed this, but was run by the farm hand, but the farm hand had a robot hand. Did you see the robot hand?
No, I did not see the robot hand. I wasn't paying attention to the robot hand. There's some wild stuff happening on Adventure Island, and one last thing about this before this. I do hope... I think that the lore behind Galaxy's Edge is probably a little more advanced than Adventure Island. The only piece of real world building that we were given was a newspaper broadsheet that I'm holding in my hands right now, called the Island Ledger, and it's written by a woman named Mary Claire Murdoch. And apparently, the island is going through the Truce Day celebration, which was today, which I guess was a week ago, but probably if you go there today... I
think it's every day.
I think if you go there anytime this summer, it's going to be Truce Day. So, new era of peace and prosperity is at hand. And here's some background on what happened on this island. And this is all I have. Okay. The Wappies and the Cayugas have spent years being consumed with greed, fear, and distrust since the infamous melee that resulted in dissecting the treasure map. The tribes remained as split as the map itself. Peace on the island disintegrated. Camps were looted, friendships were broken, chaos ruled the day. Word spread to the mainland, and cavalry officer Etta Fox was assigned to mediate the conflict. After much effort, Fox created a truce between the two clans through communication, goodwill, and cookies. She also confiscated both pieces of the treasure map, stitched the map up, and hid it away in a lockbox with the understanding that after 5 years of a successful truce, the map could be resurrected. With each passing year, the truce got a foothold, tensions eased, and life went back to normal on Adventure Island. And now the island celebrates a full 5 years of peace with its first annual Truce Day celebration.
That is some very clunky world building.
Yeah, I have to say, if you're gonna... Okay, so I was reading this. When I picked up this newspaper, and we went and we got some snacks and sat down for a bit, and I was reading the newspaper as I was drinking this, like, peanut butter and chocolate root beer, which was, decent, I thought, although a little bit strange tasting. And you were getting corn on the cob or some bullshit, and I was waiting. And
I got corn on the cob that was it was grilled right in front of me, and then they coated in butter, and then they threw Parmesan all over it.
Sure.
It wasn't a good sweet corn. I don't recommend it, but I was intrigued by the fact that there was a vegetable on the menu, like as a main menu item. So I figured, I'll try it.
Okay, whatever. Anyway. So, it does not matter. You were doing that, and I was reading this aloud to the other people we were with, and in the moment, when it talked about Etta Fox, how part of the way she brokered the truce was through cookies, I was like, huh. And I looked over, this is the only food place on Adventure Island, and I looked over, are there cookies on this menu? No! There needs to be some of Etta Fox's famous cookies. What the hell? This is basic world-building stuff when you're talking about immersion. I don't feel immersed. Where are Etta Fox's cookies? If they were so powerful to create a truce, you better believe she was going to keep baking those and keep selling them.
I agree. And it's I kind of want to go back to this place and spend even more time there.
Yeah, we missed. There wasn't there were a couple shows that we missed there, and that kind of thing.
And we got to. I'm pretty sure we met Etta Fox.
We did. I think.
Yeah, she rode a very funny bicycle.
She was impressive. I found her impressive as a figure.
Right. We should.
This is stupid.
Well, I guess at the sheriff's station, right when you walk in. Inside is the treasure map, right? So it's like, it seems to me, in this immersive world, one mission should unlock another mission, and it leads you to this treasure map, which ultimately leads you to the treasure.
Well, ultimately it was an experience. Hopefully sometime in the next year we'll be going and having a better experience on the planet Batu in Galaxy's Edge. That's right, we used the tenuous connection of Galaxy's Edge to talk about our weekend.
Well, what's interesting about this place is this place opened this year.
Yes.
It's claiming that it's immersive experience, which it is.
Sure.
And they opened it 6 days before Galaxy's Edge opened. So I guess Harry Potter is the first immersive. And
there have been other versions of this kind of thing before. It's like,
right. I know there's an Akira Battle Angel thing.
Alita Battle Angel. Thank you.
Oh yeah, you're right. Oh damn, great movie by the way.
Akira also a great movie. There you go.
I've been told. I know they're doing a John Wick thing.
Oh, they are?
Similar to this.
Oh,
yeah, they are in New York at the hotel that they actually filmed as the Continental.
Rules. Okay. Well,
that does rule.
Anyway, so we aren't a theme park podcast. We're not going to do this every week. I just thought it would be funny. We were talking about the whole time. There's a picture of us on our Instagram where in front there's like a kind of a playground area called the High Ground.
The High Ground,
and,
yes.
Of course, we had to take a picture with that sign. So if you saw that on the Instagram, that's the context.
That was the one Star Wars thing we saw there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a Star Wars theme park, if we had a Peanuts podcast, we'd devote a whole episode to our trip to Cedar Point.
Oh my god, we could talk about Beach Blanket Beagle.
Well, there's so many things we could talk about. It's too bad this is a Star Wars podcast.
I know. If you are in the Ohio area, go to Cedar Point, go see Beach Blanket Beagle, go see Lusty Lil's French Review.
Yeah, I would say Beach Blanket Beagle is higher on the priority list.
I agree.
That is a legitimately fun show.
But that show came from California, and Lusty Lil's is an original show to the Sandusky area. Stuff. Right.
Anyway, so yeah, if you're anywhere in Western PA or in Ohio, definitely check out Cedar Point. Definitely check out Adventure Island. It might be a good stepping stone for you into Galaxy's Edge, like we hope it is for us. But When we come back, we're talking about Star Wars. Jedi Apprentice, number 14, The Ties That Bind. The Ties That Bind. I'm not singing, I just want to... Okay. You guys, you get it. I like Bruce. Anyway, so... when we come back, we'll be talking about that book. Please stay tuned. Hey guys, Tim here. I know our sketch output has been quite embarrassing lately, and it's going to be embarrassing again this week because I didn't write anything. Because as I record this, it is 2:58 on the 4th of July, and I'm taking the holiday, guys. It is what it is. I already have to put these episodes together, upload them. Honestly, I just forgot. I should have written something earlier. It is what it is. However, I'm not going to embarrass myself like Levi did last week by giving you that half-assed Shark Tank sketch at the very end of the episode. Don't worry. You'll never get something like that from me. I always put the full work when I do put the work in. So, anyway, I will, whatever. Enjoy The Ties That Bind. This is a good episode. Welcome back to Padawan Library. I'm Tim May, here as always with Levi Paratic.
Hola.
Oh boy. Anyway, because I deprived the listeners of my beautiful reading of the back of the book for this week at the beginning of the episode, because I'm a huge Bruce dork, I thought I would read the back of the book now, because just to have it, I feel like I've read all these. There should be recordings of me reading all of these. Don't you think?
I agree. The first time I heard this, I was like, because I had an idea to initially to read the back of the books like Tom Kane in the Clone Wars episodes, like at the intro of every episode. But as soon as I heard you do this for the first time, I was like, nope, I don't stand a chance of doing that. So go right ahead.
All right. 6 years ago, Qui-Gon Jinn and Tall helped the people of the planet Absalon choose their first free leader. It seemed that peace had arrived at last. Now, the leader has been killed. His daughters have been kidnapped, and Qui-Gon and Tall have returned to Absalon with Qui-Gon's apprentice, Obi-Wan, against the wishes of the Jedi Council. The ties that bind Qui-Gon and Tall are about to experience their most powerful test yet. Boom.
I have that underlined on the back of my book. Their most powerful test yet. That is for this book series, that is a huge claim. So this book had a lot to live up to.
Oh, okay. Well, before we jump in, I wanted to point something out, and some of our listeners are certainly more familiar with the series and with these books than us, and might have read them at the time, and maybe they're thinking right now, like, we're getting to a point where some other books were starting to come out at the same time. So I wanted to point this out. This book, The Ties That Bind, was released in, I believe, August of 2001. Yes. And I wanted to point out that on our schedule, we are reading Jedi Apprentice 1 through 18, and then the Jedi Apprentice Special Editions 1 and 2. And the first Special Edition, Deceptions, was released in July of 2001, so a month before this book. So I wanted to point that out. I looked into it. It seems like it does. Most of the events do take place after number 18. Or a lot of the events do. Certainly, there's the Obi-Wan and Anakin parts because it has a crossover storyline. So I don't feel bad about doing it. I'm just letting people know. I am aware that it came out before. However, the second special edition came out after Book 18. It was the last Jedi Apprentice book to come out before the beginning of the Jedi Quest series. And one more thing.
I did not know any of this, so I am fascinated.
So, there's one more thing, though. At the end of this book, The Ties That Bind, you might have seen an ad for the book Jedi Quest that's coming out. It says in August, but actually came out in September. The hardcover, it's not the first book in the series, but it's a standalone book called Jedi Quest by Jude that came out in September of 2001. So it was the next book to be released after this one. Again, we will be covering this with the Jedi Quest series, which we're going to be starting probably in November. So, because we got some Halloween stuff and some miscellaneous stuff we want to get to between the two series. But I just want the listeners to know we're aware of the release schedule of these books. I was not before this morning, so I'll be upfront about that. But I'm aware of it. But I looked into it. It seems like the way we're going to be reading it will be fine. It'll run smoothly. We're not going to have any issues. So
yeah, this is a lot like Buffy and Angel, how they ran at the same time. But I was completely unaware of this. Wow, Jude pumping out like 3 books in the course of 2 months.
Well, think about it. July is when. Well, think about it. June is when the last book, when Dangerous Rescue came out. Then July is Jedi Apprentice Special Edition 1, Deceptions, and then August is Ties That Bind, September is Jedi Quest, and then October is the next book, The Death of Hope. So that's wild. That's like, what, 5 months in a row of new books? And a couple of those are longer books, too, so...
Right, and to start, like, basically a new series in there, too. Like, a whole new storyline between this Obi-Wan and Anakin storyline and that is...
Yeah, and the Jedi Quest main series did not begin until May of 2002, which is after all the Jedi Apprentice books were out, so...
Okay, that makes sense, and that explains why you have, like, Jedi Quest and then Jedi Quest number 1.
And it's interesting. We'll talk more about this in November when we get to the series, but... interestingly, if you look at Jedi Quest, the first like book that's not number 1, if you look at one of the title pages, it says Jedi Quest: Path to Truth. So it kind of has its own title. Well, that'll.
Oh wow!
I don't know how I'm going to handle that when I title the episodes, but we'll figure that out in due time.
That's actually a book I've read before. That first, the book 0, I guess we'll call it. Yeah. But I never remember that coming out and having that in hardcover and actually reading that and vaguely remembering one scene about the book, but nothing more.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that in November. But this week, we are getting not too far from the end of Jedi Apprentice. We only have, there's only, 4 main books, 4 of the regular series left after this one, so... pretty exciting. We only got 2 more batches of them, because we break it up next week. We're going to have another book, and we'll talk about it at the end of the episode. But anyway, we should jump in.
Right, we've had some time passed.
Some time has passed. And
yes, it has.
Well, I'll get into all of that, but this is interesting. So, the last book, if you remember, was the end of the Gena's Arbor arc. That wraps up relatively conclusively, and everyone's back on Coruscant, and this book picks up seemingly much later, probably, at least a year, maybe 2 years.
I can't remember how old is Qui-Gon.
Obi-Wan is 16 at the beginning of this book.
In this book, so this could be like about 2 years, 2 to 3 years after.
So, that's interesting. And we'll talk about that going forward. So anyway, this book does open with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and they're on Ragoon 6, which is a beautiful and kind of cold world, cold air, brisk air. Qui-Gon had suddenly taken them there for survival training, and they've been there about 10 days, and Obi-Wan is now 16. Time is progressing, and he can see a future now where he is a knight standing side by side with his master. Qui-Gon reminisces about a time when he and Tall had come here for a training mission, and they always said they would come back together. He says wistfully, interesting. Obi-Wan can tell something's up with Qui-Gon and Tall. What could it be? So, I want to read one just quick thing here on page 3. This is the earliest I've read something in a while. This is just a short thing. Qui-Gon's blue eyes scan the mountains and valley. We are here now and gone in a moment of time, he said quietly. You must be sure of what you want and believe, Obi-Wan. Good life advice from Qui-Gon. So,
that is great life advice.
So, they hear the cries of a creature called the Malia, who Qui-Gon says they should avoid. Ultimately, of course, they do encounter the beasties, and they have an extended chase battle with them. Qui-Gon eventually dispatches one of them, and the rest of the herd runs off. And at this moment, some natives, they come out, and they got like ceramic blow dart type weapons, and they're aiming them at the Jedi. Qui-Gon lets their leader know that they only killed the Malia out of self-defense. They aren't off-worlders trying to steal meat from the natives. And the natives are like, okay. They let them go. And as they're walking away, Qui-Gon stops. He closes his eyes, and something disturbing seems to happen. He seems off balance, and he seems to be having a vision. He thinks to himself, interpreting visions can be dangerous, but he tells Obi-Wan they need to return to Coruscant immediately.
Chapter 2, the setup for the whole book. It takes them 3 days to reach the transport that they have to hike 3 days to get to this transport, and then another 7 hours to reach Coruscant, with Qui-Gon pushing the transport to its limits to get there as quick as he can. And when they arrive, Qui-Gon's like, I will explain what's going on one day, but first I myself must understand what's going on. And he runs off, he leaves Obi-Wan behind, and he finds Tall, and she is in the middle of a meeting with the Jedi Council, and Qui-Gon, he just burst into the council chambers. He needed to know she was all right. And this is a big no-no in the Jedi Council, showing up unannounced. And Mace Windu, he shoots Qui-Gon a stare like that. He just pierces through Qui-Gon.
Qui-Gon may might as well be Brett right now.
Yes. And but they said, we're going to let you stay because why Tall is here today involves you. And luckily Tall fills us in. And this, much like the back of the book, years ago, the two of them were sent on a mission to Absalom. And back then it was a totalitarian government ruled by a minority that called themselves the Civilized. And below them was the poor majority, the workers. And there was a secret police that called themselves the Absolutes. And they ensured that fear kept the civilized in control. And now Absalom, the workers, it has a big tech industry, so they are assembling tech, that kind of thing. And the workers, through industrial sabotage, were able to lead a mostly bloodless revolution, with most of the bloodshed being caused by the Absolutes. So this led to a call for a democratic election, and that's when the Jedi were called in on official Jedi business to oversee the peaceful transition. And Ewan, or Ewan, it looks a whole lot like Ewan, as in Ewan McGregor, but with an E at the end. And he is elected their leader, and he had twin daughters. Their mother died while they were very young, and Ewan, he spent most of his life in prison. So these girls, they didn't have a father figure, and Tall, her and Qui-Gon were there, got very close to them, and it brought out a tenderness in Tall that Qui-Gon rarely saw. So when the transition was complete, the two of them had a disagreement. Tall wanted to stay around for the sake of the girls, but Qui-Gon, who ultimately prevailed, said, hey, the peace is here, we gotta go. So now 5 years later, Ewan has been murdered, and he's been succeeded by his close associate Rowan. And Rowan is actually a member of the Civilized, not the workers, but he was one of the first of the Civilized who called for democratic elections. And now it's feared that he has organized the murder. And Ewan's daughters, they live in fear for their lives, and they've gone into hiding. And they were the ones who contacted Tall to help them. They were pleading, please come and bring us back to Coruscant. We're not safe here. So, in other Tall news, this is unrelated to this whole story. Tall, in this time gap, has selected a Padawan. And however, during the whole Melita Dan arc, I remember she once said something about like never having a Padawan ever, and that made Qui-Gon hurt because this is when him and Obi were broken up. But she has a Padawan, and it's Bant, Obi-Wan's, of course, one of his best friends in the Jedi Temple. But there's not a whole lot of partnership between them. Tall hasn't brought Bant on a lot of missions. In fact, she's left Bant a lot at the Jedi Temple. So now Tall is planning to go to New Absalom. They renamed the planet after the elections, and rescue the girls. So Qui-Gon, who is now part of this whole meeting, he pipes up and says, we've made many enemies while we were there. It could be dangerous. Maybe I should go with her. And the council, they agree that it could be dangerous. And instead they tell Tall to just wear a disguise while she's there. And so they leave the council chamber, and this is where Tall confronts him. And when she's like, why are you here? And he doesn't mention the fact that he had a vision. Because the Jedi believe that vision should not govern behavior, because these visions are rooted in fear. So in a lame excuse, Qui-Gon, he says that he, not actually, backtracking a little bit, so his lame excuse that he does give her, he thought he was needed. Tall interprets this as like him thinking she needs a caretaker always. And before he can explain what's going on, she turns to leave. And on page 22 and 23, there's a little bit here. In a rare show of anger, she, as in Tall, stamped her foot, her caramel skin flushed with pink. Then what? Why do you keep insisting on interfering? Friendship. Oh, yes. One corner of her mouth lifted. Then in the name of friendship, dear Qui-Gon, leave me be.
Oh.
She abruptly turned towards the turbo lift. He felt the drift of her soft robe against his hand as she moved. And then she was gone.
Ay, ay, ay. So, news of this gets to Obi-Wan pretty quickly, because Obi-Wan's talking to his girl Bant. And Bant is confiding in Obi-Wan her concern about Tall's solo missions. They haven't truly connected as master and apprentice. Obi-Wan encourages her to be patient, because after all, it did take time for him and Qui-Gon to connect with each other. But since Tall's departure, Qui-Gon has been distant, engaging in intense physical training, and Tall's mission was supposed to be 2 or 3 days, but now it has been 2 weeks. She hasn't checked in with the council. Yoda tells Qui-Gon they are not concerned.
Why are they not concerned?
I don't know. They're concerned. Like, there's always reasons that maybe you can't use your communicator. It's like, okay, yeah, but after 2 weeks? Come on, Yoda. Anyway, so on page 27, though, Qui-Gon has another vision. All he could see were her eyes. Usually they blazed like green crystals with traces of gold. Now they were black and dull, filled with suffering. When she saw him, they sparked to life. "It is too late for me, dear friend," she said. Whoa! So Qui-Gon wakes up from that vision.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen to Tall? We don't know. So he's done. He's like, okay, I want to respect Tall's, desire to do this mission on her own. I want to respect the council, but no more of that crap. He goes to see the council, and on the way he runs into Obi-Wan, who accompanies him. Qui-Gon informs the council just right away that he is going after Tall to New Absalom. Yoda and Mace Windu are pissed. And they ask, why are you doing this? He tells them about his vision. And this makes them even more against him going there. They say, wait for Tall's next transmission. Qui-Gon's like, nah, I'm wasting time here. This sets Mace off. He's like, you're wasting time with the Council? You're telling me you're wasting time with the Council? Anyway, and if Qui-Gon does do this, it will be in direct defiance of the Council. Qui-Gon's like, fine, that's fine. He strides right out. Obi-Wan rushes after him, scurries on after him, tells Qui-Gon that he's going to come with him. Qui-Gon doesn't want Obi-Wan to defy the Council on his behalf, though. And on page 31... There's an interesting little scene with the two of them. All right. Let me just find it here. 31. Here we are. Yeah, okay. Why don't you start? You are going to New Absalom today.
Okay.
On page 31.
You were going to New Absalom today, Obi-Wan asked.
As soon as I can arrange transport.
Then I will get my survival pack and meet you on the landing platform.
Qui-Gon took a breath to compose himself. No, Padawan, he said gently as gently as he could. You must remain behind. I cannot ask you to defy the Council on my behalf.
You are not asking me, Obi-Wan said. There are reasons...
to stay. I will not be gone long.
That is what Tall said.
Qui-Gon sighed. Unlike Tall, I will remain in touch with you. I will call for you if I need you. He held Obi-Wan's gaze. You know that I will.
Obi-Wan's gaze did not falter. Qui-Gon could see that the Padawan did not understand, yet he would not back down. My place is by your side, Obi-Wan said.
Qui-Gon took a deep breath, then let us depart. Oh, touching scene of master and apprentice. That's what this series is all about, Levi.
It really is. That's the charm of this entire series, is this beautiful relationship between the master and apprentice. So they arrive on New Absalom, and the capital city of New Absalom is New Absalom. So, like the Jedi Council told Tall, they decide to put on some disguises. So they change into some casual New Absalom digs. And Qui-Gon, he doesn't think anybody will remember him, but he's taking no chances. So he's not going to announce this to Jedis. They're just going to try to blend in. So while moseying through the worker district, he's like, hey, this place is in pretty good shape for having had a revolution not too long ago. Unlike, Melita Dawn, which was a planet reduced to rubble. This place is nice. And they see a seemingly randomly placed clear columns placed throughout the city, next to sidewalks, in the middle of fields. And they find out that these are memorials to the workers that were slayed by the Absolutes during the revolution. And Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, they find them profound as well as well-executed art form. They kind of stand in awe at these, and it's just like, wow. Compared to those frickin' mausoleums on Melita Dawn that hovered over the water and were just everywhere, this is a far more, I'm far more moved by these columns. That was my interpretation.
Yes, I understand.
So they mosey into the civilized sector of the planet, and they all have to go through security checks there. So they're immediately confronted by anti-Rowan graffiti that says Rowan kills, Rowan murders, Rowan must die. And they reach the security check, and this is where they meet the chief security controller, Balog, and he tells them to watch out because the government is about to issue a travel warning to off-worlders because our government is such a volatile state, and he thinks that Rowan is a good guy. I mean, he gave me this job, I was a worker, and now I got this civilized job. And Rowan, he's such a good guy, he took Ewan's twins in after Ewan died. So, like, he's their daddy now. Qui-Gon's surprised. He asks where do they live, and Rowan's like, oh, just actually 2 blocks from here. It's not far. So they head that way.
So, they go to see the twin daughters, Aretha and Alani, who are staying with Rowan after the death of their father. There's heavy security at their home, but Qui-Gon informs the guards of who he is and why he's there. He and Obi-Wan submit to a retinal scan and enter. Qui-Gon is warmly greeted by the sisters, who are identical twins. They ask why he's there. He asks where Tall is. They think, oh, we were hoping she would be with you, they say. And then he's like, did you not send for her? Qui-Gon asks them. And they say no. They also say that they feel safe with Rowan and he's like their new father. Which Qui-Gon takes as, with a grain of salt, but, he takes it at face value, but understands that something else might be going on. But the big question is, if they didn't send for Tall, who did? And where is she?
So, with few leads to go on, they start to wander the city, and they stumble upon the Absolute's museum. And they go inside, they pay a couple credits, and they are given a tour by a lady named Irini. And Irini, she's got this kind of twisted hand. It's a little mangled. And she explains that all of the tour guides at the Absolute Museums were former prisoners of the Absolutes. And when they saw those towers, those columns in town, there are clear ones, which represent people that have been taken by the Absolutes. And there are white ones that were people that were killed on the spot by the Absolutes. So, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are just like, mwah, whoever was the artist behind these columns. They just really knocked it out of the park. And the Obi-Wan, he asked, what was she held for? When she was held captive, and she ran a worker newspaper, and the Absolutes felt that her writing would promote violence, so they sentenced her to 6 months of reclassification, which is a fancy term for being tortured. And she was released, and when she was released, she joined a group of workers. And they had the idea that if we produce faulty products, this is their whatchamacallit, their, I had a word for this earlier, their, what was the word? Hang on. This is, I feel so dumb now.
What is the word?
What is the word? Industrial sabotage. This is their industrial sabotage. and now I have to find where the hell I was in my notes. And so they had this idea for industrial sabotage, and because if they produce faulty products, the buyer would return them, and thus profits would be dropped, and the civilized would have no choice but to cave into the workers' demands. And so she leads them through the various torture rooms in the Absolutes Museum, and they see sensory deprivation coffins and a demented movie theater. And I have a bit here to read page 47 and 48 here. And she led them into a chamber with screens along the wall. Behind them, a projector lens protruded from the back wall. This is what we feared the most. Here we were forced to watch the torture of others. Sometimes it was people we knew, friends and family. The Absolute used probe droids, largely to monitor the workers. They kept the vital statistics of all of us on file for easy tracking. They could find anyone if they needed to. Irini stared at the blank screens. They found out that I was engaged to be married and found my fiancé. Obi-Wan drew in a breath that he could not imagine that the kind of mind that would devise such a torture. This time he did not feel he could ask Irini what happened. Irini glanced at him. What they did not realize, the Absolutes, was that for the one being tortured, it somehow helped to know that others were watching. The Absolutes thought only of pain they could inflict, the double pain of the victim and the watcher you see. But the victims took courage in the idea that they would be brave for those who knew and loved them. those who would withstand for anything for love. Probe droids are now illegal on New Absalon, and no one wants to bring those days back again. She looked back at the screens. There are many days in this place that I said goodbye to life, yet I managed to survive. It must be difficult for you to return, Qui-Gon said, and yet here you are giving tours to others. Remembering is most important, Irini said. In the dim light she held up her twisted hand. I consider myself lucky to leave with only one hand damaged. They broke my hand in order to prevent me from working in the tech center again, but they stupidly did not know that I am left-handed. I was just as fast as a worker when I got out, maybe faster. I had no trouble getting another job. Her smile was unexpectedly brilliant, lighting up her tense, drawn face. I had cause for work. Some dark stuff here.
Yeah, I know, damn.
In this. Some really dark stuff. And let's see, did I have anything else to say about that? So she leads them out a back door, and Qui-Gon in his parting words is like, so did they manage to round up all the absolutes? And she's like, not a chance. Many of them, they went underground, and the government, they sealed all the files because they're all bureaucrats. Workers weren't allowed to be absolutes, and they had friends in high places. And also, the government's excuse for this is, there were secretaries and administrators that had no hand in the torture, and if we release these names, then those people would become victims. So as they're leaving, Obi-Wan notices a necklace with an emblem on Irini's neck, and he finds, for whatever reason, he notices it and finds it odd. And just then a gust of wind comes by, and it blows back Qui-Gon's tunic, and Irini gets a peek at Qui-Gon's lightsaber, and she and Qui-Gon says, I get a feeling that you don't trust Rowan, and she replies, the absolutes taught me one thing, stupid as they were, trust no one.
Oh, deep throat right here. I mean, the X-Files Deep Throat, not Mark Felt, but...
Oh, okay, I was confused there for a minute.
Sorry.
I thought you were talking about Watergate.
Well, there's a character in X-Files who's an informant from Mulder who calls himself Deep Throat. It's heavily implied that it is the Deep Throat from Watergate. This was before we knew the identity of Deep Throat, so whatever. Anyway, X-Files rules. So, Chapter 7... As they leave the museum, Obi-Wan contemplates kind of what memory of trauma means and how useful is it to sit in that memory, and can it curdle over time? He reflects not just on Irini, but on his friend Bant, who had almost died in the waterfall at the temple, if you remember, at the hands of Xanatos and Bruck. But had continued to spend time there. It was her favorite spot, and he's found this interesting. He's about to ask Qui-Gon, but Qui-Gon did not look to be in the mood for philosophical conversations. Qui-Gon notices a probe droid, those supposedly outlawed things on the planet, and the probe droid is following them. They try to outsmart the probe droid, but eventually, of course, Qui-Gon just fucks it up with his lightsaber, and at that moment, blaster fire rains down on them from above. Once they arrive on the roof where the blaster fire is coming from, their attacker has escaped, but they left behind a small pile of objects, including a small leather transmitter, which bears an insignia, the one also worn by Irini.
So, in the wake of this... they follow Irini from work, and she leads them to a building that's scheduled for demolition. And our heroic duo eventually ends up cramped in a closet with a cracked wall. And on the other side of the wall, they can see a meeting is going on with Irini and some others. She tells the others, hey, there's Jedi in the town, and I think Rowan sent for them. And the others aren't convinced because it's like, hey, don't you remember? The Jedi are peacekeepers. They did so much for us 6 years ago. And Irini's like, who cares? We need to take down that murderous bastard Rowan anyway. And the others are all like, whoa, 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 whoa. We said we would find evidence of this first. Calm your pants, Irini. And then the conversation shifts to the Absolutes and the fact that the Absolutes are still around and that they have new leadership. No one knows who the leadership is, but Rowan probably supports them. This Rowan character, his name's getting drugged through the mud. And a calm buzzes, and somebody picks it up, and they just hear, the Absolutes are raiding. So the meeting party, they get up and they quietly leave the building. They already had an escape route. They were planned for this. But Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, not so much. And the Absolutes, they bust in, and before the two can get out of the closet, they're surrounded. And Qui-Gon, he tells Obi-Wan, he's like, we need to submit because we're surrounded.
So, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, they're bound and dragged to their holding place. They don't say anything. Do their captors know they're Jedi? Who are their captors? Question 1 is answered very quickly. When they're thrown down in the cell, one of the captors says, this is where you Jedi belong. And so he calls the Jedi the enemy. Why are they considered the enemy? Qui-Gon asks. Because their neutrality 6 years earlier led to the dissolution of their captors' preferred government. Not everyone should be able to vote, they say, etc., etc. These are the and it's soon easy to tell that these are the what are they called? The Absolutes.
The Absolutes.
The remnants of the Absolutes. As we all know, only a Sith deals in Absolutes, but they're left alone in their cell. Obi-Wan asks Qui-Gon if he thinks that they'll be tortured. And Qui-Gon says he doesn't know, but he points at his lightsaber, indicating that they don't need to take that shit if it does happen. But they don't need to worry about that, because less than an hour later, they're taken to see somebody. On page 69, here we are. 1 second. I will read
I'm
this.
there.
I will get there. No, not 71, 69. Okay. Alright, so they take them in. Here are the Jedi. We can see that, brother. The voice was low and powerful, with a wry twist to the cadence that he knew well. He being Qui-Gon. You may leave us. Yes, his hands were bound. Yes, he was blindfolded. He was a prisoner with no way out that he could tell. But Qui-Gon's heart sang. He had found Tal.
What?
So Tal is one of their captors, interestingly enough.
Very interesting. So now Qui-Gon, he gets asked a flurry of questions from these absolute losers. Why you here? Who sent you? Why were you at the meeting? Meanwhile, Tal, she's silent this whole time, and Qui-Gon knows that this means that not only has she infiltrated the Absolutes, but she has gained power. And this leads Qui-Gon to start thinking about his vision again. So on page 71, we get another look at his vision. And here it says, when he released her, her body could not stay upright. She seemed to fold into his arms like drifting silk, odd, because he always counted on her strength. Now he felt her softness of her hair and her skin, the lightness of her bones, how he felt she could melt against him and become part of him. Tears sprang from his eyes at the way one of her hands curled weakly around his neck. So this vision seems she's dying in this vision, perhaps, and maybe this is why he's so concerned. And so these lackeys, these absolute lackeys, they discuss, maybe we should kill these Jedi, send a message. These absolutes are very much like neo-Nazis, kind of characters. And Tal, she finally chimes in, only to crush her new, I have written here, her new segregationalist coworker. And she says, if the Absolutes are to regain power, we need to have the favor of public opinion. The public remembers the Jedi as peacekeepers. Killing them will only make us look like assholes. And then the one loser, he's like, well, why don't we kill them and not tell anybody. And Tall, she shuts this guy's ass down too. She says, well, if they go missing, the council and the Senate would investigate. We'll need to let them go now, and, so get your ass out of here. So these two losers leave, and on page 74 and 75, this is when Tall and Qui-Gon get to have a little talk. So I want to start at thank you, Obi-Wan said quietly. So I guess I'll read for Tall and Obi-Wan, and you can read for Qui-Gon.
Okay.
You there?
Yep. I said
okay. Thank you, Qui-Gon said quietly. Then Tall approached him, but instead of unwrapping his blindfold, he felt her crouch in front of him. So, Qui-Gon, she said, at last we are equal.
Hardly. You were always my better.
Flattery will not give you back your sight.
I don't have to see you.
Oh.
Come on.
Sorry.
I don't have to see you. It is enough to know you are safe.
Tall sighed. He felt her warm breath stir his cheek. A moment later, he felt her cool precision of her fingers as she unwrapped his blindfold. It took a moment for his eyes to take her in, but she was in disguise. Her distinctive green and gold-striped eyes were now dark. Her hair was cropped short and the color of a pale moon, contrasting with her dark honey skin. She kept her face toward him as if reading him with her senses. He regarded her strange new eyes, and his disquiet at seeing her disguise faded as he saw his familiar Tall behind the new color. He could not help it. He was happy. She must have known it, for suddenly she reached out and touched his face with her fingertips, and he felt her fingertips against his lips. You are smiling.
Yes.
Don't. She did not drop her hand, but kept it against his mouth. He saw that she was unable to keep a small smile off her. She was unable to keep the small smile off her face as his own smile broadened beneath her hand. I cannot seem to get rid of you, she said.
No, Qui-Gon replied. You cannot. Damn.
Had I was able to actually read that aloud better, it would have been very flirtatious, very hot and heavy of a scene.
Yes, interesting. I've always said that they might want to fuck.
I wonder.
All right.
I just want to fuck you.
Oh, God. Enough of the for you references. So, if they do fuck and get together, they better hope they don't go bankrupt, because this is Chapter 11. So, Obi-Wan observes how close Qui-Gon and Tall are, tries not to be jealous. He doesn't quite understand the nature of this relationship yet, I don't think. But she leads them out of the room to an area where they can safely talk. She tells them that the twins did in fact call her there and actually did feel potentially unsafe with Rowan. And they suspect that maybe he did have a hand in their father's murder. Tall and the twins agreed to keep them here and work to stabilize the government rather than them going into exile on Coruscant. Qui-Gon admires Tall's bravery in infiltrating the Absolutes, but without a direct request from the planet's government, they have no reason to stay. He's obviously also quite scared for her safety, but this is what he says to her. And he says they should simply return to the original plan, take the twins off-world to safety. But instead, of course, they compromise. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are going to investigate the Yuane's death for a week. If they find no evidence of Rowan or any of his associates' involvement, they will offer they'll offer to take the twins off-world. And should the twins refuse again, they will return to the temple and not come back until a formal request is made of the Jedi. Tall suggests that they start their investigation with Mannix, Rowan's brother. Despite Qui-Gon's wishes, Tall will remain undercover with the Absolutes.
So they find a hotel room for the night, and Qui-Gon cannot sleep. You know, he thought finding Tall would put his mind at ease, but these feelings, they just won't go away, and he's tossing and turning on his sleep couch. And this is when Obi-Wan...
So many sleep couches in this book.
A lot of sleep couches in this book. He asks Qui-Gon, you know, if he's all right, and Qui-Gon always has a wall up, always a barrier. He says he's fine, and that a growing boy like him should get some sleep. You know, just ignore me. So the next day, they decide to head to Rowan's brother's house, Mannix. And Mannix, he's got a bigger house than the Supreme Governor's mansion. So they introduce themselves as Jedi when they knock on the door, because the Absolutes know they're Jedi, and the workers know they're Jedi, so everybody already knows. It doesn't matter if the civilized know. So they state they're on an unofficial business, and a droid leads them into the house. And when Mannix finally greets the Jedi, it's in a grand fashion. He has an all-green room because green is his favorite color. He's wearing green robes, and he offers them pastries. And at first, they leave the pastries alone. And Mannix, he has no qualms about hiding his wealth. He has wealth, and he wants to spend it on only the best things. And while he has a long history of using connections through his brother and his status as a civilized to grow his wealth, he claims that anyone else in the same position as him would be a fool not to do it. So of course he knows that the public perception would only see him as an possibly as an orchestrator of Ewan's murder. But he, as he puts it, why would he put his fortune in jeopardy? Of course he's the obvious suspect for this murder, but if he were to do it, it'd be too obvious. So, and also, Ewan was his brother's best friend, so he'd be foolish to kill him, especially since the economy was nearly as strong as it was before the revolution. And now all of that hard work, all that economy building, has been shot to hell. And this is when Qui-Gon, he tries one of these pastries, because Ewan, he had beefed them up that he has the finest pastry chef in the whole planet. And Qui-Gon, he is surprised. He pops this little pastry in his mouth, and he can't even hide the fact, like, ooh, what a delightful dance on my taste buds. And Mannix, he even notices it, and he's like, oh, have some more, you know. But Qui-Gon, he says, well, we must excuse ourselves. We got some more unofficial Jedi business to attend to. And Mannix, he says, you guys come back anytime. So after that, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, they reflect on what happened on page 91 and 92. So let me know when you're there.
I'm almost there. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to start at, what do you think?
Okay. What do you think? He asked Obi-Wan as they returned to the street.
And, of course, classic judgmental Obi-Wan. I found him unpleasant, Obi-Wan said. He could have the cunning to engineer an overthrow of the government, but I can't see him having the energy to do so. He would have to get off his sleep couch.
You are allowing dislike to color your perceptions, Padawan, Qui-Gon said disapprovingly. Remember, it takes energy to amass wealth. Mannix had it easier than most, but he did build an impressive financial empire.
Which he uses for his own pleasure, Obi-Wan said disgustedly.
I have seen men and women of vast wealth who did not enjoy their own comforts, Qui-Gon remarked. At least Mannix enjoys what he has built. His choices are not our choices. Do not let his enjoyment of pleasure blind you to his merits.
You see merits there? Obi-Wan asked incredulously. I see corruption.
I see a man who lives the way he wants to live and makes no apologies. The question is, how desperate is he to maintain his life of wealth and comfort? Qui-Gon wondered. If Mannix seems weak, I suspect he is not. Despite his denials, he could secretly hate his brother, but we still should not discount his perspective, Padawan. Qui-Gon reached inside the pocket of his robe, and he reminded me of something important.
A clue?
He handed Obi-Wan a pastry he had plucked from Mannix's tray on the way out. Even in the middle of a mission, don't neglect to taste the pastries. This works for me because of where Qui-Gon's at this point in the book, in the series.
Yeah.
I will say this feels a little like, I mean, the fact that he's just like, yeah, this rich guy's just enjoying the fruits of his labor, man, is a little non-Qui-Gon to me, but it works for me because of where it goes.
He's seen people not enjoy them.
Yes,
so,
yes. But I don't really view Qui-Gon as like a capitalist, laissez-faire capitalist. But I should say a laissez-faire capitalist. Blah. I'm tripping over my words here, but I'm just saying this scene works for me because it to me indicates where Qui-Gon's headed later in the book. Anyway, so they head over to Rowan's place and they look for a point of entry. There seems to be no way in. Everything is eerily quiet, and Qui-Gon finds this suspicious. So he tells Obi-Wan, look for a sign of entry of somebody having broken in. They see a door ajar, and then, boom! They notice a team of intruders hauling the sensory deprivation container from the museum earlier. And there's someone with blonde hair inside. They have the twins! The Jedi go after them, but they're already loaded. They've already loaded the containers onto swoops, and they're off. And Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are now confronted by Balog, the head of security from earlier. And he asks them what the hell's going on. Qui-Gon tells him that he believes the intruders have kidnapped the twins. Balog orders a search of the grounds, and he says, I'm going to have to tell Rowan, it'll break his heart. Or will it? Or will it, Levi?
I don't know. So they secretly meet with Tal in the park. She doesn't believe the Absolutes were behind the kidnapping. She would have heard about it. It could have just been as easily as Irini and the workers. They would have had access to the sensory deprivation coffins because at the museum. And now there are some rogue factions of the Absolutes, but there's no clear suspect. So Qui-Gon, he says, Tal, please join us in this investigation, but she thinks she should stay with the Absolutes. There's still more to learn. She can still use their resources to see what they can find out. And Obi-Wan, he agrees with her, but Qui-Gon doesn't, but he doesn't fight it. So as for their next course of action, Obi-Wan suggests they should pay Rowan a visit, but Qui-Gon, he's doubtful. He's like, man, he's got a kidnapping on his hands. He won't have time for us. But just then, Qui-Gon's comm goes off. It's Balog. Rowan wants to meet with them. So they go see Rowan, and protesters are already starting to fill the streets. The news of the kidnapping, it's spreading quickly. And the people, they want Rowan gone. So the first thing Rowan says, your unofficial business, Jedi, has just become official. I need your help. I need to find the girls. And secondly, I need someone to tell me what to do. I fought so that our people would be equal. But whenever I close my eyes, all I see is visions of it all in ruin. So Qui-Gon, he knows all about visions, and he sympathizes. But Qui-Gon first wants to know why Rowan believes the people want to pin him for Ewan's murder. And he says it's because his enemies use it as an obvious scapegoat to their advantage, pushing for new elections. And while in the meeting, Rowan's comm buzzes, and it's the kidnappers. They demand that they will release the twins if Rowan resigns. Backed into a corner, he all but agrees, and but he'll only do it once the girls are returned to safety. They agree to meet somewhere, but they'll get back to him with a location. Qui-Gon, he urges him, when the location is set, you need to call us, because I fear they're going to try to kill you during the exchange. So they wander off, and we go into Chapter 15.
So, when they leave Rowan's office, Qui-Gon receives a comm from Tal, who, her identity as a Jedi has been discovered by the Absolutes. This is DEFCON 1. DEFCON 1. So she has escaped, but they've sent probe droids after her, and she can't track them because of her blindness. And she tells them that she needs Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and so she tells them where she is, and they rush off to find her. They do find her safe, ultimately, and there's protesters all through the streets. But and so relief is flooding Qui-Gon as since Tall is safe. But he says the safest place for them right now is with Rowan, even if he is behind the kidnapping. Since Tall's cover is blown, she can come with them, and she finally agrees with Qui-Gon for once in this book. And so they try to hide in the crowds on the way back to the palace, but of course they have a few scraps with the probe droids, and whatever. They take care of the probe droids. I mean, come on. Read the book for that action, baby. Anyway, so when they arrive, one of Rowan's assistants says that Rowan has taken a meeting with the kidnappers. Yeah. Anyway, but the assistant knows nothing beyond that, and they wait in Rowan's office for his return, and eventually Balog arrives to escort them to a more comfortable living quarters, because they've been waiting for hours in this office, and Rowan is nowhere to be found. And on their way to the living quarters, Qui-Gon notices a package on the outside of the compound, points it out to Balog, has security check it out. But that's not just any ordinary package. It's Rowan's dead body!
What?
Ew, gross!
What? So, Qui-Gon, he runs up. Rowan's eyes are open. He died with his eyes open. Qui-Gon closes them.
Hard as fuck.
Balog, he comes up and he's like, "You can rest now, my friend." And they carry the body inside. And they agree that for the time being, they should not announce this. Whoever killed him would want it to be known. With the demonstrators outside, there's no telling what could happen if they publicly announce it. So they contact Manex. He arrives in a green robe with a tasseled hat, and he's like, "I was having a dinner party when I got the news." And Obi-Wan, classic judgy Obi-Wan, he thinks the attire is inappropriate. But Qui-Gon says, "Hey, come on, man. This means this dude literally dropped everything he was doing just so he could be here. It's not like, hey, your brother's dead. Oh, shit, I should change my clothes." The dude was like, "I'll be there immediately,"
And Jedi robes are appropriate for any occasion, so Obi-Wan doesn't even understand.
Right. He has no concept.
He's
at all.
16, but he's still no older when it comes to this issue.
He is not. He's still just a judgy all the time.
Well,
and
to be fair, that's a continued problem even in the movies. So yeah.
The Balog, he comes in and he says, "We think he died from a paralyzing agent. Whoever killed him, they may have done it on purpose or could have just been an accident. They must have just shot him too much with the stuff." And Manex, he's like, "Let me be with my brother alone." So, we go into day into night, and the Jedi, they sit and wait. And when Obi-Wan is close to dozing off finally, he feels a presence. They all feel a presence. So they get up to investigate, and they find Urthra and Alani, the identical twin sisters. They had heard in the streets that Ronan was dead, and they had to get there. They had to see him as soon as possible. But it's just like, whoa. Wait a minute. You guys were just kidnapped. And they were just like, "Oh, yeah, we never saw our kidnappers. They just released us, and then we heard Rowan was dead, so we had to get here." So they don't believe that Rowan killed their father. Rowan was too good of a man, and Rowan also put himself in danger for them. It's how he got killed. So now they feel that they are responsible for what happened to Rowan. And Tall's like, no, guys. This isn't your fault. Come on, come with us. We'll go to Coruscant. And they agree, even though they're just like, "Oh, but this is our home," that kind of thing. So they go in to pay their respects to Rowan, and Balog rolls in, and he goes, "Hey guys, the civilized have agreed to meet with the workers. A representative from the Absolutes also plans to be there." And Balog, as a worker who is part of the government, he's going to be there as a mediator, and Irini of the workers, she's going to be representing the workers. So there's one condition to this meeting. A Jedi representative must be present. Obviously, Qui-Gon wants it to be him, but Tall stops him. She says, hey, I've worked with these absolutes. If they start to pull some shit, I'm going to know. So she says, you take the twins to Coruscant instead. So I have here, we're going to read page 120 to 121. And I'm going to start at near the bottom of the page. Obi-Wan kept his eyes on his master. Qui-Gon had gone pale. It was clear he was not happy with this turn of events. He wanted to be the one who goes to the meetings, because, Qui-Gon always has to be the one in charge. But there was something more powerful, some more powerful emotion Obi-Wan did not understand. There appeared to be some sort of titanic struggle going on inside of Qui-Gon. Tall picked up on it as well. She frowned and seemed about to speak. But then, to Obi-Wan's surprise, he saw something flickering in Qui-Gon's eyes, almost though as Qui-Gon was amused by something private. It had gone so quickly that Obi-Wan was sure he was mistaken. His master shook his head as if it was as if to clear it. He appeared both shaken and determined at the same time.
Qui-Gon turned to Balog. Sorry.
You go ahead.
Qui-Gon turned to Balog. Will you excuse us? I need to speak with Tall alone.
Of course. Balog bowed and retreated. Obi-Wan started off with Qui-Gon and Tall towards the private room, but Qui-Gon turned.
Please wait here, Padawan, he said kindly.
Surprised, Obi-Wan could only nod. He watched as his master followed Tall into the room and closed the door firmly behind them. What's going on in there?
So, Qui-Gon tells Tall that he does agree that she should be the one to go to the peace negotiation, but that he and Obi-Wan will not escort the twins to Coruscant until she returns safely, because he fears that if he says goodbye to her now, that it may be the last time he sees her. But he tells her that he has two things to tell her. That's one of them. The other one begins here. And we're going to read pages 124 through 126. And
okay.
I'm going to start. I'll read Qui-Gon, you read Tall. I'm going to start here. I have come to know something, he said. I cannot let you go. I cannot let another minute pass without telling you this. I did not come to New Absalom only because you are my friend. I did not remain because you are a fellow Jedi. I have come to see that you are not just a friend and a fellow Jedi, Tall. You are necessary to my life. You are necessary to me. You are my heart.
He saw her chest rise and fall. Color rose in her face. You are not speaking of friendship, she said.
I am speaking of something deeper. I am speaking of everything a being can give another. This is what I offer you. I offer myself. He could not have spoken plainer. Hard words to say, but they needed to be said. Another being would have taken a step, sat, moved, spoken. She was perfectly still. He waited, counting his heartbeats. He had taken a decisive step. It would put their friendship to the test. He was willing to take the risk. At last, he had known himself and his feelings. He was not sure of hers. In that moment of revelation, he had understood all the tension between them over the past months, all the misunderstandings and irritations. They all had one root. Somewhere inside, he had known his feelings for Tall had deepened, and yet he was reluctant to face that. Back in the hall, the certainty of it had felt like sweet relief. But now, he was not so sure. Tall appeared flustered, but that could be for any number of reasons. If you do not feel the same, I will step back into place and be your friend again, Qui-Gon said. He was a man comfortable with silence, but not this one. He would never want to cause Tall distress.
No, Tall said with a sudden warmth. Do not step back. Let us step forward. I feel as you do, Qui-Gon.
He took a step forward at the same time as she did. She placed her hand in his.
I did not know it until this moment, she said. Or maybe I did. Maybe I've known it for some time.
He felt her fingers, warm and strong in his. I pledge myself to you, Tall.
I pledge myself to you, Qui-Gon.
They stood, not moving for a moment, but both of them were now conscious of what waited for them outside the door.
I must go to the meeting, Tall said.
Yes, Qui-Gon agreed.
We are Jedi. Our life together will be full of separations.
Yet we will have one life together.
Yes.
When you return, we shall escort the twins back to Coruscant, Qui-Gon said.
Unless the government asks for our helps, Tall amended.
Yes, unless we are asked officially to stay, Qui-Gon agreed.
Whatever decision we make, we will be together, Tall said.
Yes, Qui-Gon agreed. At last, this is clear. Oh boy.
Ooh.
Big stuff. You guys, I bet you regret getting married back in November, because then you could have written those into your vows. I pledge myself to you.
I pledge myself to you, Mel. Yeah, we would have probably done that.
Yeah, no, who knows? Anyway, so this scene obviously opens up a huge Pandora's box that I'm sure will be explored more in the next book. But this is a big deal. I love that they're like, okay, well, we're Jedi, and this isn't like, oh, we're going to leave the Order. I do wonder how much communication was it known at this point amongst the Lucasfilm offices that they had to have known by this point that, love is a forbidden thing amongst the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious if that factors going forward.
But they are encouraged to love, Tim.
Yes, that's true. Anyway, so that's a huge turning point. We've been predicting it for months now that something's going on with those two.
Anytime he talked about her, like her honey gold skin,
yeah,
you knew there was something more that Qui-Gon he had something deeper to always be looking at. That
it's actually
honey
like
skin.
we're joking, but it's a sweet scene, and I think
it is.
It works. I think it's effective, and I think I like that his realization of it is relatively simple. He just kind of thinks it to himself, and like. I think it's effective material there.
It is.
So, yeah.
It is. So anyway, chapter 18. She leaves for the meeting. The sun rises, and Qui-Gon orders some breakfast. The always hungry Obi-Wan Kenobi wolfs down his entire plate of food. Qui-Gon
still growing at age 16, baby.
Yes. He is. And Qui-Gon, he just sips on his tea and he chuckles to himself, all of the hunger of a growing boy. Suddenly, Irini shows up. She's demanding to see the Jedi. The security, they're like holding her back, and the Jedi are like, well, you did fire on us earlier. We found the same insignia on the pile of junk that was left on the roof that was on your necklace. And she goes, oh, this insignia? This is the symbol of the workers. We're not a violent bunch. Somebody might be trying to fool you. And they're just like, hey, didn't you say something about information? And she was like, oh yeah, we have a spy on the security detail in this house. We know whoever is responsible for the kidnapping, they know everything about the security, even the codes for the door. Our person on the inside doesn't even know the door codes. So they start to ponder, who could have all this information? And the realization, it pops into their head. What about Balog? Balog could have fooled them. Balog could be at the meeting right now with his own hidden agenda. Hey, wait a minute. Wait, Leia, Irini, aren't you supposed to be at the meeting? And Irini, she just stares at them blankly. What meeting?
Oh boy, big news. So, Qui-Gon immediately, of course, rushes into action. He and Obi-Wan run to the building where the quote-unquote meeting was supposed to take place. Then they arrive at Rowan's office in this building. His assistant, his flustery assistant, is all flustered. What's going on? And so, Qui-Gon demands that he showed them the secret meeting room, and they see Tall's lightsaber outside the room in a basket full of blasters, and the room is empty. Qui-Gon slices the table in half with frustration with his lightsaber, and he's just thinking, man, if anything happened to Tall, he will be just like that table, halved. And that's the end of the book. Big cliffhanger here.
It's a huge cliffhanger. And this is an exciting book. A lot happens in this book. A lot of humor in this book. A lot of this series, in my opinion, has become like a real kind of like the Jedi are detectives kind of thing.
Yes.
They're mysteries and they got to solve the mystery kind of thing. But this one's a fun one.
So yeah, this was I really loved this one. I think the series has been on a huge roll, obviously, since the Genesee Arbor arc is great. But this, I thought, even stepped it up another level, at least just in terms of the character engagement. A lot of the stuff in that arc was very solid, just on a pure like mystery story level. I thought it worked for me. But this one, like, is clearly like big emotional material for Qui-Gon, even to some degree for Obi-Wan. I'm sure we'll get into that more as the arc progresses. But I have to say, huge fan of this one. Do you want to go into final thoughts then, or?
Yeah, I will, because you mentioned that we have huge character progression here for Qui-Gon, but we also have huge character progression for an original character that's to the series. Tall, Obi-Wan is confessing his love for this character that Jude created.
Yes.
So it's cool that this original character has been part of the series for so long, and that it is growing as a character along with the characters that we know from the source material. So that's very exciting, and it's exciting that how engaging it is for people who have read this whole series, that we've come to this genesis in the series. And it feels
Genesis?
very
the beginning
yes,
of
this. Okay, the beginning of their love.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
This is just a confusing word, I would say.
So this book's great, and I'm going to give it a solid 10 midichlorians. And my character flavor is, of course, Tall. I love Tall.
You know what? We're always in agreement. I'm going to go...
Yes, we are.
I'm going to go crazy here. This is my favorite Jedi Apprentice book.
Oh!
Yes. I found the character work in this very compelling. I think there's other ones I've loved. Deadly Hunter, Hidden Pass. I love the Melita Dawn arc.
Mm-hmm.
This series has been very consistent, generally speaking. This book, I think, is... I'm very excited to see where it goes. I find the character work here so compelling with Qui-Gon and Tall, especially. And I just love Tall. I think Tall is a great character, a great Star Wars character, and I fear for Tall, where I'm.
I do too.
But I am very excited for more of her, and I'm going to go all out here. This book is conceived in midichlorians.
Whoa!
Oh, a first for the
conceived
show.
in midichlorian.
A first
wow.
for Padawan Library. Conceived in midichlorians. It goes beyond 10. So, of course, the only person who's conceived in midichlorians is Anakin Skywalker. So that Anakin looms over this book.
He certainly does. He certainly does. And, at this time, Jedi Quest was beginning, and we were exploring his story, too, at the same time, so...
There's that. That's the ties that bind. Unfortunately, we have to wait 2 weeks to get the conclusion of this cliffhanger, which will come in the Death of Hope, which doesn't sound great for our girl Tall.
No, it doesn't.
Oh boy. I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle that if that happens, but we'll see. So that's in 2 weeks, but next week we are returning to the Join the Resistance trilogy. We will be the first people to ever have any sort of real discussion about the book Escape from Vodran on a podcast or on video or anything like that. I'm sure there have been some, like, Kirkus reviews, I'm sure did a write-up of it and stuff, but I think we are going to be first on this one.
Yeah, I'm confirming this now. Yep, there is no, on YouTube, there is no review for Book 2 or Book 3 of Join the Resistance.
So we're
There's
breaking
only
some new ground here.
One review of the first one. Yes, we are This is show first today with Conceived in Midichlorians. Show first next time. We are the first ones. We are breaking new ground. This is ground that Wikipedia hasn't even broken, because if you look on the pages, they are only plot summaries. You cannot actually spoil the ending to this book series on Wikipedia right now.
Wow.
The only way to know what happens is to listen to us or join the book club and read the book along with us.
So if you're going to read the book, though, you got a week. This is the longest book we've ever covered on the show, and maybe the longest book we ever cover in this way at all. This book is, what,
320 pages.
Yeah, 320 pages, which is essentially the length of, like, a lot of novels. Obviously larger print and stuff, but I honestly don't think there's another book that we will read that is that long for this show.
The only book that may come close is because I can't reach it. I can't tell you what the page count is, but I know it's a thicker book. Is is it the Legacy or the Legends of Luke Skywalker? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but that's like short stories. I don't know. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Now, I will say this. You read The Ties That Bind today. I finished the book 4 days ago, yes. So in anticipation for the 300 pages, I have picked up this book already, and I am 120 pages in.
Okay.
It moves. It's very. I've had no problem. I have kind of breezed through this 100 pages very quickly.
Okay,
it
good.
seems no longer than a Jedi Apprentice book would be. The one thing I have to say is that Benjamin Acker and Benjamin Blacker have a very long-winded approach to the way that they tell their story. And what takes them 20 pages, Jude Watson could accomplish in half of that.
Well,
but it's still the same amount of information being presented.
You should save this for next week, but
we can discuss this further next week. For
yes,
sure.
And I will be beginning the book probably today. But we're only recording this a few days before the release of this episode. We are not ahead the way we like to be on this show. But regardless, next week, Escape from Vodran. And I thought, people might not be as interested in those, but I was looking at our stats. Pretty even download numbers across the board on all the episodes.
Well, good.
So I'm glad, that you guys are listening. In the meantime, please email us at padawanlibrary@gmail.com. I promise that email episode, it's going to come. I think probably after Jedi Apprentice. You need to start posting about this on the social media.
I will.
Solicit these things. I think we're going to do that as like a palate cleanser when we're done with Jedi Apprentice. We'll do a some sort of mailbag episode. So that's a couple months off. You guys got all kinds of time to think of questions, but think up some questions. So email us there or check us out on Instagram at Padawan Library, Twitter at Padawan Library, Facebook Padawan Library. And
find us on YouTube. Subscribe to the
YouTube. Occasionally, we have some new video content, and if you're listening to it on YouTube, thank you. But anyway, so subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get podcasts. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars only, please. And otherwise, I think we are good.
Right. Well, then, until join the book club, and until the books are due back,
the library is closed. Padawan Library is hosted and produced by Tim May and Levi Peretic. It is edited by Tim May. Our theme song is by the Astral Project. Our artwork is by Freddy Funbuns. Padawan Library is copyright 2019 by Tim May and Levi Peretic. All rights reserved.